Why didn't Rome conquer Scandinavia? For centuries, the Roman Empire stood as the most dominant civilization on Earth. Its legions marched across continents, and the banner of the eagle struck fear into the hearts of native peoples across the known world. But they never ventured into the lands of the north. Nestled at the northwestern edge of the European continent, and separated from mainland Europe by the cold waters of the Baltic and North Seas, we find the Scandinavian peninsula. Geographically, it comprises two countries, Norway and Sweden. But more often than not, when people refer to Scandinavia as a whole, they also include Denmark, despite the nation not actually being a part of the peninsula. During the Roman era, the region was home to various distinct cultures, most of which spoke Proto-Norse, a language that belonged to the Northern Germanic language family. While Scandinavia would become infamous during the medieval period for the emergence of the Vikings, a subculture of raiders, traders, and explorers who are best known for pillaging coastal communities throughout the known world, Scandinavians were primarily farmers, and their settlements were often centered around longhouses that housed extended families and their livestock. During that time, the inhabitants were organized into smaller, independent tribal regions, each ruled by a chieftain. As we consider Rome's ambitious conquests and its desire to expand, it's intriguing to contemplate why they never ventured into Scandinavia to subdue the people there. Part of the answer lies in the encounters Rome had with the Scandinavians' West Germanic-speaking cousins of present-day Germany and the Netherlands. During Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars around 57 BC, the Romans clashed with several Germanic tribes and established control on the west bank of the Rhine. Years later, the ambitious Emperor Augustus launched several campaigns of his own with the grand purpose of conquering Germania. Despite their initial success, the dreams of full control over the Germanic people would come to an abrupt end following the devastating loss of Roman life during the Battle of Teutoburg Forest in 9 AD. As a vast Roman army, led by the ambitious Publius Quintilius Varus, marched deep into the dense, unforgiving Teutoburg Forest, unbeknownst to them at the time, they were about to be ambushed by Germanic tribes under the command of their leader, Arminius. Ultimately, 3 Roman legions and their auxiliaries were annihilated, leaving approximately 25,000 men dead. Following the devastating defeat, subsequent Roman emperors such as Augustus and Tiberius largely abandoned the idea of conquering and annexing all of Germania and expanding towards north. Instead, they focused on securing their natural frontiers on the Rhine and Danube rivers as a strong defensive presence in the region. So, as Roman officials, from the comfort of their lairs, carefully dreamt up new expansion plans for the empire, it's likely many looked to the uncharted territories beyond Germania as a region filled with unpredictability and risk. Since Germania wasn't fully conquered and integrated into the empire, anything beyond that was largely ignored or seen as unworthy of Roman effort. But what if Rome expanded into Germania and tried to push more into the north? The tribes were adept at guerrilla tactics and familiar with the challenging terrain, offering the chance to catch any invader, including Roman legions, by surprise. As for the Romans themselves, they were more accustomed to facing organized armies and would have found it difficult to subdue a population that could quickly disappear into the forests and mountains. The Battle of Teutoburg Forest was a good example of this. One thing they could be certain of is that if they marched their legions there, they would have been met with prolonged resistance from the northern tribes. Moreover, the Romans also faced the challenge of maintaining a long supply line to such a distant territory. Any Roman army venturing into the north would have needed adequate provisions to sustain its prolonged expeditions. However, If the supply line had come under attack, they would have been left stranded in a foreign region with little food or gear, making a prolonged campaign extremely risky. Considering just these points collectively, it's easy to see why a Roman incursion into Scandinavia never materialized. But the military aspects aren't the only thing that could have stopped Rome from moving north. The geography of Scandinavia presented a formidable obstacle to the empire's expansion. Unlike the relatively flat and easily traversed lands of Germania or Gaul, Scandinavia is characterized by rugged terrain and densely packed forests. Alongside this, much of the landscape is covered in steep mountains and fjords, making large-scale military campaigns not only difficult, but also incredibly expensive. The terrain was not conducive to the Roman style of warfare, which relied on open battlefields. The harsh northern climate also posed a significant challenge. Roman soldiers were accustomed to warmer climates and would have certainly struggled to operate effectively in a terrain with cold climates and limited growing seasons. While the region produced a considerable amount of timber and furs, these were not as strategically valuable as the resources found in other conquered territories. The cost of conquering and administering such a distant and resource-poor land would have likely outweighed any potential benefits. As noted in Thomas Graine's book, The Roman Empire and Scandinavia: A Northern Connection, the Roman Empire was already engaged in trade with the tribes of Germany and Scandinavia. Essentially, the Romans could obtain the goods they needed through trade rather than conquest. Alongside the lack of economic incentives and the risk of military annihilation, shifting priorities over the long history of the Roman Empire also played a role in its ultimate decision to avoid venturing to distant lands. As the Roman Empire reached its zenith by the 2nd century AD, its strategic focus had evolved. The empire, already sprawling, faced staggering costs in maintaining its borders. At this juncture, the Romans found themselves embroiled in a web of internal conflicts and external threats. The emergence of the Germanic tribes pressing against the Roman frontiers necessitated a redistribution of attention and resources. In reality, the Roman Empire was already overstretched. The decline of the Roman Empire, which was well underway in the 3rd century AD, further reduced its ability to conduct large-scale military campaigns. By this point in history, the empire's focus shifted to defending its existing territories rather than expanding into new ones. The Roman Empire's reluctance to conquer Scandinavia was not due to a single factor, but rather a combination of geographical challenges, limited economic incentives, the fierce resistance of Germanic tribes, and shifting priorities within the empire. The unconquered North remained a realm of mystery and independence, a testament to the resilience of its people and the limitations of even the most powerful empires. The Viking Age, which followed the Roman period, would see the Scandinavians themselves become the conquerors, embarking on daring voyages of exploration and conquest. But that story is for another time. If you'd like to help us keep creating and get early access to our videos, behind-the-scenes content, and other perks, consider becoming a member right here on YouTube or joining us on Patreon. Every bit of support helps. And as always, thank you so much for watching.